And welcome back to the 10th Rama, everybody. I'm John. With me today, we've got three people for today's RTD. Starting on the very end, we've got Kevin.
Hey, guys.
And then we've got Sean, my co-host.
Hello.
And then we've got new on the panel is Amanda. She's been posting on our social media. She's got some painting videos coming out, as well as a couple of battle reports to be posted. So go ahead and give a brief introduction, since this is your first time on the panel, about your hobby experience and the armies you play in Sigmar.
Okay, so I've been playing Sigmar for just under 2 years now. I started playing 40k, I guess about 3 years ago, before getting into Sigmar. I play Sylvaneth, and then I have working on adding a couple units of Fire Slayers to my Sylvaneth army to give it some extra punch. As far as painting goes, I've been painting for about 4 years. I started off doing board games, painting some things for the guys at the local game store, and then kind of turned that into a commission business. So that's been going on for, I guess, the last 2.5 years now. I recently won first place in the diorama competition at Captain Con, and I stream on Twitch sometimes, and you can find tons of my stuff on Instagram. I do tutorials sometimes, so you can check that stuff out there.
All right, sounds good. Mm-hmm. All right, so a little bit of a structure reformat for the shows going forward until we decide to change them again, because we decided that the new releases was a little bit hard to film without the actual product, because we usually film these before Saturday and we release on Saturday. And if a release comes out, say Night Haunt, and nobody in our group wants to play Night Haunt, we don't have anything to talk about. So we're changing it a little bit, and that's illustrated by the lovely bar that we have underneath us. Moving forward, hopefully that will be animated when we have all of the people on deck, as opposed to not having everybody on deck. So the new segment is going to be the community, and it's just a blanket topic where we're going to go ahead, ask the panel members something that they've seen on the internet. It can be from GW themselves, it can be from a creator, whatever. It's a chance for us to plug existing content creators that you may or may not already know, and something that we think is worth checking out. So starting with Sean, what was something you found on the internet this week that excited you?
Oh boy. Well, it is getting hot out there, and I'm not talking about the weather. For anyone that's not familiar, they announced Age of Sigmar 2nd edition, and with that, the new Night Haunt and Sacrosanct Chamber for Stormcast Eternals. And really, I think that's just been the highlight of my whole week. Huge shout out to whoever sculpts at GW, because their sculpts are spot on. They're really cool. It's a whole new Night Haunt release, so we've got tons of new units coming out. As I said, the battletome's coming out, and the Stormcast are really cool looking. They're kind of all priest looking. So that's kind of my shout out. Check them out if you haven't seen them.
Yeah, especially that new the Stormcast that's riding on like the dog dinosaur thing, whatever that's supposed to be. It looks awesome. I can't wait to paint that.
All right, Kevin?
I am super excited, like Sean said, for the Night Haunt release. So much so that it actually made me consider playing Night Haunts now that the new release is coming out. My favorite model by far is the new Hangman model.
That one was pretty cool.
Really by far my favorite model coming out. Like Sean said, the guys who sculpt the models at GW really hit it out of the park on that. I'm not too excited about Sigmar. I haven't really ever been into those guys, but the Night Haunt is totally caught my eye.
Okay. Amanda, what did you see?
I really liked the look of the new release of Rogue Trader. A lot of those models looked really cool.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm pretty excited for that. And then is this also where we're doing the community internet finds?
This is what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so one of the things that I found while I was, scrolling through Instagram and Twitter is Aaron Wolf Dave on Twitter. He just won silver in the Golden Demon at Warhammer Fest this weekend, and he had a really cool conversion. It's part Belisarius Call, part Iron Strider Balistari, and then I think part of like the 30k AdMech. It looks really hot. So that was my kind of like inspiration, and just like the more I looked at it, I was like, oh, I recognize that bit there, and oh, that's a really cool way you use that. So I thought that was a pretty sweet conversion.
And moving forward, when we have the editor in the studio with us, we're going to be able to pull up graphics. Again, unfortunately, our editor called in sick today, so we don't get to pull up the graphics for this, but this would be a prime example of pulling up the actual image for you guys to see. My internet find is, I was going to say the Nighthaunt release, but since everybody else is enjoying the Nighthaunt release, I'm going to say the future promise of War Queen's army and
Dark Coeth.
Yeah, and the squid or night goblins. I'm sure the internet has pointed it out. Sean has been a big proponent of it. If the Stormcast and Nighthaunt got new heralds, it makes sense that the other two are going to be full army releases too. And then to piggyback off of Warhammer Fest and second place, not to be outdone, first places was phenomenal. I don't know if you guys saw this. This would be great chance to pull up the graphic again. Not totally trying to throw the editor under the bus, but I might be. It was the Snail Rider guy.
Oh, yeah, that one was pretty great with all the nurglings
And it had a
on
nurgling farting a cloud out on the top. It was terrific.
That's
All
amazing.
right, so that was what's inspired us this week. So we already basically covered news and rumors because Warhammer Fest just happened, and oh my god.
Yeah.
So much stuff.
And so this will go into our hobby goal phase, which is very quickly, 10 seconds or less. What is your goal from this Saturday to next Saturday, Amanda?
I need to get some Fire Slayers done for the Triumph GT the first weekend in June. I have 31 to do.
31, that's a lot.
Yep.
Again, for the Triumph GT is kind of our deadline. This week I'm going to try and get 10 Reavers and my Eidolon of the Sea assembled.
And I'm going to try and get the rest of my Plague Bearers and Glotkin finished. I just need to texture the Plague Bearers, and then Glotkin needs just one more layer of skin and his horns.
Nice.
Great. I need to get a couple more games in with Wanderers before I settle on bringing them to Triumph. So my hobby goal is actually just get more games in because I finally settled on a fantasy game.
There you go.
Oh, fancy.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It's like
Took
2
3
months
weeks.
in the making.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and then the last segment in the community segment, which is the first segment in our 2-segment show, is the evaluation segment. We unfortunately can't do it this week, but next week we'll actually have a viewer-submitted army list that we're going to try to critique, so these guys will get a week's notice on that, and we'll try to piece that together and give our opinions on it. And so on weeks that we don't have a new user submitted, we'll either be reviewing a top tier tournament army or we'll be doing a actual War Scroll analysis. And this week's War Scroll analysis is the Fulminators from Stormcast. I asked each of the panel members to review the War Scroll, its points, and give us a brief summary of what they think and whether the unit is good, not good, should it be in tournament armies. If you were playing the army, would you be running it? And I specifically picked this unit because I knew that the 3 panel members today don't play Stormcast. So totally out of their comfort zone. They would only have ever seen these against them. So I wanted to get their opinions on it. And we're going to start with Sean.
Okay, so in this case, we're talking about Stormcast Dracolian Guard Fulminators. And even our local Stormcast player doesn't run these. And I'm not sure why, as I'll start talking about. We'll running through some of the highlights of their stats. It's 2 models for 240 points, which sounds like a lot, but I think they're actually pointed pretty efficiently. They have a movement of 10 with 5 wounds each, and the 3-up save that goes to a 2-up against shooting. Well, it's still 3-up, but you add 1 to their save roll. And they come in 2-man groups up to a 12-man unit size, and overall, I think they're fantastic. Bravery 7, I believe.
Yep.
They get buffs on the charge. Their spear goes to 3 damage, and I think that's the only thing that changes with it. And when they shoot, they deal out mortal wounds. And they reroll 1s because they have shields.
I was going to say, so basically you're only missing on 2s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
And just looking at the War Scroll, I just do not understand why we don't see them more. I think it's unfortunate that GW did not put a battle line if restriction on them, so to speak, so that you could actually run just big units of these guys. I can let the other panel members talk more kind of about their uses. My only other input would be, I think the reason why we don't see them everywhere is because GW hit out of the park with this week's army look at the Sacrosanct Chamber, but Stormcast in general, in that the additional chambers that came out are hard to master, where the basic guys are easy to learn, and I don't think are as rewarding to learn and play them. So in this case, why bring these when Vanguard Wing works?
All right.
Yeah.
Kevin, your thoughts?
So my original thoughts were they're totally worth the points they are for, 240 for 2, totally worth it just for the damage output alone. On the charge, their glaives go from one damage apiece to a 3. Those are 3s and 3s at a -1 rend as well. And on a 6 or higher, you have a chance for the I think the Dracoth's claws and fangs to go from 1 damage to D6 damage.
Yeah, which is pretty insane.
Huge.
It's a huge bump.
Yeah.
It is.
As well as the +1 to save in shooting and with their mortal wounds. I think that these guys would be great in like a 6-man unit. I wouldn't say, max unit size. It's really kind of expensive for what essentially would be a Death Star unit. You'd put at one end and then just kind of sweep through. But I think a 6-man unit would be perfect, kind of a little distraction. They're pretty fast at a 10-inch move.
Yeah.
And really just cause havoc on one side and kind of make your opponent dedicate more to them.
Yeah, you're either gonna have to deal with them or just basically you're
Ignore
gonna
them,
lose
yeah.
whatever they get sent into, kind of.
Yeah, and just keep rolling off of that. Amanda, your thoughts?
So again, what I kind of thought the same things towards Kevin. I was thinking like 2 4-man units would probably be really great. Again, you're able to get wherever you need to go pretty quickly. And then, I mean, you can't overlook the fact that they're able to deal out mortal wounds, because that's basically the end goal with Sigmar in order to win, is deal out those mortal wounds.
And what's the mortal wound ability that they do?
So it's called Lightning Surge, and they spit a crackling torrent of energy at enemies that come too close. When a unit is hit by a Lightning Surge, do not make a wound roll. Instead, the unit suffers a mortal wound or 2 mortal wounds if it's within 3 inches of the attacking model, and it's a 6-inch range, D3 attacks and hits on 3s.
That's pretty big too. I mean,
Yeah.
you're essentially getting, if you make max, D3 mortal wounds against somebody, or possible 3 and then D3 if they're within 3 inches. So a good damage output on their shooting too.
Yeah. Yep. So I liked them.
Okay.
And I mean, also, not completely ability related. They're also just really cool looking. I mean, they're Stormcast riding gigantic dragons, so
Yep.
that's
And then
pretty cool.
nothing that anybody touched on is they can just inherently deep strike because they are Stormcast. So they can just come
I
down
didn't
on a
even think of
3+ and just set them up wherever you want. I'm also surprised that they're not everywhere. I feel like it's probably their lack of protection against mortal wounds that we're seeing them not taken in large numbers. There's such a heavy investment. Most things that are comparable, coming from my own background of armies that I've been trying to mull over, is the Morghast from Legions of Nagash, and they have a built-in ignores wounds and mortal wounds on a 5-0. So they're very similar points cost, very similar wounds-wise, very similar movement, damage output, etc. They can ignore mortal wounds. So I feel like that's the barrier to entry on these guys, is that in a mortal wound spamming army, like if you come up against Change Host, your units are just being removed. Being able to deep strike them has its advantages against Change Host because you keep them off the table, they're safe, but you could not have them come in on a 3+. Luckily for us, one of our other Stormcast players just recently bought 12 of them, so we will hopefully be seeing them on the table fairly soon.
I hope not.
So that is our community page segment. A little bit, we're just trying to get broad strokes through because the real meat and potatoes of the show, as always, is the discussion portion, which is we're going to jump into right now. And this week's topic is going to be essentially the best way I could think to describe it in terms that could just be easily translated is WYSIWYG. So what you see is what you get on army paint. So a lot of armies have been coming out with skyports, covens. The Deepkin have enclaves. Should, in the general question here that I'm going to be asking all the questions based off of is, should a player paint their army to their specific sub-faction, I'll call them for the rest of the show, to receive their benefits? Example, if you want to be running a Hagnar sub-faction of Daughters of Cain, should you have to follow the paint scheme that is provided in the book to benefit from all of their individual special rules? And so the first question is going to be about tournaments first, and then we'll talk into that at the WYSIWYG on paint later on in the show. So the first question is going to be talking about major tournaments requiring 3 colors for just playing in the tournament plus minimalistic basing, and then an additional rubric to get more points on top of that. So explain why you think that painting requirements should be enforced or should not be enforced on a tournament level. Can't stress this enough, this is about tournaments. What you're doing at your local game store, if you want to run bare plastic, I have a problem with it, but we're talking tournaments, should it be enforced, should it not be enforced? And we're going to start with Kevin.
Okay, so I had 2 answers to this, but my first one is it totally should. And just because, your opponent takes the time to fully paint his army, fully base his army, and then his opponent is gray plastic, it doesn't look great. I mean, unfortunately, I hate to say that, but if you're just, as far as the tournament goes, I like to play against opponents who have fully painted armies, who put a lot of time, and not saying that you didn't if it's just gray plastic, but who put a lot of time and effort into making their army look good. Full conversions, free-handing, and general things like that. If you do run gray plastic, like John said, at a local game store, that's fine. But in my opinion, in a tournament setting, you should definitely have to follow the 3 colors and minimalistic basing.
Okay. Amanda.
I think it absolutely should be enforced. It helps to forge the narrative, and basically you kind of get like a complete immersion into your game. It's really distracting having gray plastic everywhere on the table, and I'm gonna be completely honest, it looks like trash. Also, it helps to separate units, so not everyone is familiar with every army. So having painting, it helps you separate out units a little bit more if you're not familiar with them, so you can see what's going on the other side of the table. And then also, I mean, not for nothing, but it really is 50% of the hobby that we're involved in my opinion. And especially with tournaments, you're paying money to be there, and it's absolutely no fun for anyone to be playing against an army that does not look good. And I'm just going to go out there and say it. One of my big pet peeves is proxies at tournaments. I understand that, like, you can get some cool third-party bits, and that's totally legit. But I don't want to see toys on the table when we're all paying an exorbitant amount of money to be in this hobby.
Okay.
I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
Sean.
Okay, I'll kind of come in halfway here. I think it should be enforced, but I think part of the tournament setting is that you are being penalized if you're bringing gray plastic. And one of my big things is, not necessarily that's not painted, but it's when you're going to a tournament and the latest crazy list just got posted online, and someone goes out, buys the models they need for the event, but then they're half assembled gray plastic. I know that happened, but it does happen. And I understand why people really want to just play the list. But to get back to the main question, should it be enforced? I think so. Agreeing with my fellow panel members here, it kind of ruins the immersion. You're paying to be there. But I think on an even bigger note, most tournaments, when they are setting up their tables, the tables are nice. Lots of them have these mats now that are laid out. They have painted terrain. And the TO organizers are taking the time to set up a nice table for you so everyone enjoys themselves. And adding in your own painted army is really what makes the event, I think. And moving forward, everyone now is starting to stream their games, top tables, and people are using the term esports. And I think that especially needs to have two painted armies at the forefront when people are going to be logging on, seeing battle reports, basically the top tables being played. And for some people, it might be their first introduction to miniature wargaming. So they really want to be coming in, what's this? People are playing this on Twitch or whatever streaming service and seeing a table with terrain that's painted up and two painted armies going at each other.
It just looks awesome.
Yeah,
like
is really the way moving forward.
And then just one more thing to add is that you don't have to be a great painter at all to paint 3 colors and have something that's tabletop standard. Yes, it takes time, but you can do a really great job with just a couple colors and a wash, and especially with basing too. GW has the texture paints, which I use all the time on bases. So really, there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to reasonably have a semi-decent painted army.
Yeah, and you touched on something just before we move on to the next question that bugs me pretty much above anything else is you have a painted army, but you're on black square or black round bases. Like, you can't go that extra mile. Just even if you just put color on the base.
Those goblin green bases.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine because I was playing when that was a thing. That's totally fine. I remember all of the box arts used to have that goblin green on it, but it bothers me. You could even go like and just get clear acrylic bases so that you match the table that you're on. If you don't want a base, that's at least something. Meet me halfway. I don't want to see unpainted anything on the table. All right. Anybody have? I mean, we're basically all in agreement, unfortunately, so there's not much room for debate unless somebody has anything they want to add real quick.
I was just going to say real quick. Also, at a lot of these tournaments, they have people taking photos for the cover art for the actual convention. So having a painted army and having it, put onto the cover art for the convention's page, it's also kind of like a rewarding thing at that. That's my army, and that it looks cool,
Yeah, and I think that it reflects part of this game is the hobby. It's not an RTS or a board game where you can just sit down and play. You actually have to put some effort into it beforehand, whether you build it or not, or you pay somebody else to do it, or you buy an army off eBay that's already painted. Fine, somebody put the effort into that army as opposed to you just showing up with essentially plastic army men, which I mean, I know they are, but it's, I don't want to say it's insulting the amount of effort that I put into my armies to play against an unpainted army, but it's riding that line where it's at a tournament level, I'm putting this extra level in, and I expect everybody there to at least try. And I understand that not a lot of people are great painters; they might not even be really into painting. But it's not hard to follow a Duncan tutorial and just tabletop standard your army.
Yeah.
All right. So second question: we're sticking in the realm of tournaments, and this is going to be about more of the painting requirements at the tournaments. So, with the inclusion of things like freehand, requiring display boards for maximum points, conversion on units to get to the maximum points, how do you start to tackle these requirements and what are some hurdles that you struggle with your own specific army. And we're going to be talking about Triumph, because Triumph has a very long list of requirements
Yeah, they do.
for its painting tutorials, and we're going to start with Amanda on this one.
So conversions are like I said, I'm bringing Sylvaneth with Fire Slayers to Triumph, hopefully, if I get them painted. So conversion wise, as far as the Sylvaneth goes, that's a little hard to me. The entire reason why I play Sylvaneth is because I really like the aesthetic of the models to begin with. So there's not really a whole lot that I want to do with conversions there. So the dwarves, I'm hoping that I can do some of the old Dwarden helmets and maybe some weapons, maybe even like some Space Wolves axes, just to kind of make them look a little different. Again, I'm not going to be able to get maximum points on there because I believe you need 3 units, and I am only bringing one 30-man unit of Fire Slayers, so I'm going to miss out on that. As far as freehand goes, I have glyphs and runes on the Sylvaneth, as well as little runes on the Fire Slayers. They're going to have shields, so I'll put some freehand on that. And then banners on my Tree Revenants have some freehand. And then display boards, which are my absolute favorite thing to make ever. So I'm going to go with a little bit bigger of a display board than I normally do. And I just got some really awesome Cyborg miniatures dwarf ruins. You can check out our unboxing video if you want to see more from them. So I basically have some big dwarven ruins. I'm going to make like a little enclave valley type deal where it's like a hidden valley where these Fire Slayers and the Sylvaneth have kind of banded together, and they basically the lore behind my army is that the Sylvaneth give the Fire Slayers enchanted wood for weapons, and the Fire Slayers have then enchanted metal for their weapons. So that's my army fluff behind that. And as far as starting display boards, they're kind of daunting. If like to first start out, you do need a lot of materials, but they honestly couldn't be easier, and they're just so much fun to make. So hopefully we can come out with a tutorial video while I am working on mine.
Okay, Sean.
Cool. So the question does involve our specific army. I'll touch a little bit on the hurdles needed to kind of get over some of this, especially a display board, which in this day and age isn't too bad. I know a lot of us have actually just gone to Target. They sell these really nice, I don't even know what they're
serving trays.
Yeah. Serving trays. And those painted, just even a flat black and used to carry your army around, aren't specifically display boards, so to speak, but they make it easier to carry your army around, and they look nice. And I think the next hurdle to get to a display board is something as easy as just basically painting the bottom of it. So when you flip it over, the models are higher up, they're not sunken down in, and painting it and basing it the exact way that your bases on your minis are. And that, I think, can just be the bare minimum of a display board. It represents the army all being in one place. You could go a little bit more in depth with it and put a couple terrain pieces on it. For specifically my army, which the Idoneth Deepkin I'm going to be bringing, my plan is actually to get a fish tank and half kind of gut it. And that sounds
so
silly,
cool.
but the plan is basically to install a couple clear plastic pieces for the eel cavalry, so it looks like they're just kind of floating in the tank. There will be guys on the bottom, and then the top is going to actually be, hopefully if I get around to it, it's going to be a Slaves to Darkness ship, and the Idoneth, couple spare minis are going to be attacking it on the very top, so it'll kind of have the narrative element. For freehand, for the entire army, I've seen a lot of people actually painting the thralls kind of like with fish paint schemes. I'm actually going to go a little different and do a very pale skin with, I think, bright green kind of tattoos all over them.
Okay.
And then for conversions, again, there's not a lot that I feel like I can do with them. I think I'm going to actually get a third shipwreck boat and just cut it apart and use those all over the bases, and swap the weapons from the thralls, because anyone that has bought the thralls kit, it's a very specific kit. So basically, as you're building it, unless you do a bunch of modeling adjustments to them, you will have 10 guys, the same 10 guys for every box you buy. So I think something as simple as just cutting the weapon, the very tops of the weapons off and replacing them on each guy will mix it up a little bit.
Great. Kevin?
So I play Nurgle, so conversions aren't that hard. You can basically make tentacles out of green stuff or ravenge kits for great unclean ones to the Beast of Nurgle. So I don't struggle there. A display board I was thinking about doing was a 2x2, and I'm going to call it the Plague Waterfall. And I had talked to John a little bit about this actually, where I'm going to try and have a rock wall behind it with some water effects coming down. The whole thing is going to be covered in Nurgle's Rot. And I'm going to have plague bearers coming out of the part where the waterfall meets the baseboard, and actually have them walking onto a beach, kind of like they're going to meet the Idoneth Deepkin. As far as where my army struggles is freehand, because there is not a lot of things that you can freehand on plague bearers. There is a little bit on like banners you can do, but not much. You pretty much have to either convert banners or try and do like HQ units, have little things in the background. I don't even know. I wouldn't even know how to start on that.
Maybe like some broken shields on the bases.
Oh, that would work good too.
Or the Scribdinger guy with his scroll. That's
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
open space for freehand on that.
Mm-hmm.
And previously, when they were all
recipe on.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That would be really funny if you put a recipe for a different meal on the wall.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm definitely big into hiding little pop culture things on my bases, like my skeleton Anakin with his golden arm on the base of one of my knights,
What?
and both
What's that
his
one
legs
for?
are cut off on my knight.
Yeah,
the
no,
30k
but
knight.
what reference is that to?
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Which Star Wars?
The third Star Wars. The one of the
Which
three
one
that
is
she
that?
refers to talk about.
Oh, okay.
Roger.
Great. Yeah. So real quick, I just want a 10-second response maximum. Maybe not exactly 10 seconds. I'm going to time you, basically. You're on a timetable here. With Triumph specifically, your display board requires you to have terrain from existing kits or scratch built on it. You are required to have 3 units converted for maximum points, and 3 units with OSL or freehand on them for maximum points, as well as 3 units with epic dynamic basing. So real quick, what is one of those that you need to work on before Triumph that you don't currently have a plan for?
Conversions.
Okay.
Epic dynamic bases.
I am going to go with conversions as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's the requirements to get maximum paint score at Triumph is really staggering. I'm very happy with that. I think that it turns it into it's basically the difference in max paint score is a minor victory.
Yeah.
So if you go 5-0 during the course of the tournament, but you painted your army 3 colors minimum and no basing, somebody comes in 5-0s and it's not even a tie if they have higher paint score than you. They get the minor victory and they win. So it definitely rewards the hobby aspect, which I think is great. So
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
that was the beginning 2 questions talking about tournament paint requirements. Instead of making 2 shows with semi-weak questions, I went ahead and slapped 2 questions from each show into this one. So it's going to be 4 questions this time, which is not the norm. But for this one, again, instead of having 2 weaker shows, 1 show with 4 questions I thought would be better. So now we're going to transition from tournament scene to, staying in the tournament scene, but transitioning away from requirements to what we think might want to be requirements. And that's going to be talking about the WYSIWYG paint requirements. So again, currently there's no real rule against this, but if you want to run an enclave from Deepkin, you don't need to paint your army in the way that the book tells you to do it. If you want to run Skyport, you don't need to paint your army in the Skyport colors to get the benefit. If you want to run a Coven from Daughters, you don't have to paint it in the Coven to write the whole thing. So do you think that GW intended players to paint their army in the color schemes of their chosen sub-faction in their battletomes? So again, Covens, Skyports, similarly to how players paint their armies in the color schemes of Space Marine chapters in 40K. And are these two comparable restrictions? And we're going to start with Kevin.
Yes, I think GW did intend players to paint their armies as the Enclave colors. And I also think they are comparable. I totally think you should have to paint the colors of your sub-faction to get its traits and rules. The same way with 40K and the Space Marine Codex.
Okay. Sean?
So I think that GW does intend for you to paint the scheme of your chosen sub-faction. For enclaves, for Idoneth Deepkin, we have the Covens for the Daughters of Cain, the Skyports, especially with the inclusion of multiple pages of how to paint specific enclaves, Covens, Skyports. That is kind of becoming the new thing for the way battletomes are set up. So I know for the Deepkin, there's like 6 or 7 pages of 6 steps each for each enclave of how to paint their specific colors. Coming from 40K, I wholeheartedly believe that 40K and Age of Sigmar now have turned into a creative outlet in that GW wants you to also be able to just come up with your own paint scheme and be able to choose what abilities you're going to be able to get. So for me, it really comes down to, especially in tournament setting, you either A, are playing the rules that are associated with your color scheme because you painted them that way, or B, you are intentionally not painting any of the color schemes that have been presented to you so that you can pick whatever enclave, Coven, or Skyport rules that you can use.
Okay. And Amanda?
As far as comparing them to Space Marine color schemes, I absolutely do not think they're comparable. But I do agree that GW did intend that probably around 80% of players would paint them in some of those chosen color schemes. So as far as my reasoning, Space Marines are all basically the same when you get down to it. And there are like 50 plus chapters that you can paint. So if you want to paint green, go pick Salamanders, pick Dark Angels, whatever. With Sigmar, you're really just kind of seeing a tiny glimpse of the amount of factions within the book. And I'm basing that off of the Warhammer TV Deepkin pre-release show. They discussed how originally they had 30-something enclaves for the Deepkin, and then they eventually whittled that down to the 6 or 7 that you see in the book. So, in my opinion, what you're seeing in the books are basically like the most popular factions, maybe those with like the most military success, or the ones that are based in the largest cities. And I mean, the mortal realms are huge, so there's absolutely no reason why more Skyports or enclaves wouldn't exist out there. They're just not as successful, so you're not seeing those color schemes.
Okay. The question is, though, should they be using those color schemes to get that benefit?
I don't think so.
Okay, because the way you said that is because, you know, we'll use like country flags as the example. So because, well, that's a bad idea.
So part of my reasoning behind that is that the main reason why I pick an army, I don't really care that it's competitive. I want to paint it. And having to pick a predetermined color scheme is stifling and it limits creativity. So I don't think it's a good idea. I understand that that's the best way to organize things within the book and make the most visually appealing models and scenes for all of the pictures in there, but I don't think that having to lock into a color scheme to get benefits is the way to go.
Okay. So, new tactic, we're going to use snakes. If you have a snake that is, on average, 5 feet long, it is on average black and yellow, and it is on average so toxic that it will rot your skin off if it bites you. If you find a snake in the yard that is 3 foot long, green, and you can't see teeth on it, are you going to assume that that one also is a 5 foot long black and yellow poisonous snake? This is for all of you.
Okay.
Like this is where I'm coming from as far as just playing devil's advocate. This isn't my own opinions on this topic, but sitting across from your opponent and they come up with a green snake that's smaller than a black and yellow snake that is poisonous, would you expect their snake to do exactly the same thing as the snake you know is poisonous? Starting with Kevin.
So my answer is no. I wouldn't expect it. And I guess that comes to, you should totally ask your opponent and ask them for their tournament list or the list that they're running. But to answer your question, no, I would not think that it would be either that snake would do the same exact thing or it was in the same exact family.
All right, Sean.
So we clarify, we're not talking about Daughters of Cain. We're talking about real life snakes.
Sure, yeah, like actual
So
snakes.
you would not, in my opinion, I would not expect that snake to do what the yellow and black snake does. So in this case, if someone is playing an army that's painted differently than what I know the paint scheme represents from whatever faction that rules they're using, right off the bat, no, I would not think that it would be the same.
Okay, and Amanda.
I suppose I would think that the snakes did different things, but if you're at a tournament, you're getting your opponent's army list, so there's absolutely no reason that you shouldn't know what they're fielding on the table. And, like, yes, we're all reading other army books, so we know what types of units are in there and what we can expect those units to do, but I'm not memorizing the color schemes for other armies and for their factions. Like, I have Caradron Overlords, they're painted different colors than the Skyports in the book. I couldn't tell you what the other Skyport color schemes are. I don't care.
As long as they're blue and gold, they are normally the best ones.
Yeah, like
Hashtag
As somebody who bears mine,
Sylphin
blue and
Ultramarines.
gold.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that as long as you're getting an army list and you have 5 minutes before the game starts to talk to your opponent about what they're fielding, there's no reason you should be forced into a color scheme.
And as everybody on the panel's already said, I don't have to tell anybody that they're wrong. GW did 100% intend you to paint the army exactly like it is in the book if you want to get the benefits from it, because GW is not a tournament company. They are a Forge the Narrative company. And in a Forge the Narrative, it doesn't make sense for Beric Ziflin to be running around in purple and yellow. So they absolutely intended you to get those benefits from painting them that specific color. But as everybody else already pointed out, the easy answer is just ask your opponent what they're running. Because if you should be scared of it, you should know what it is.
Yeah.
All right, and then again, that's normally where the show would end. We're getting a fourth question in today. So, why is it good or bad why is it a good or a bad idea to access a sub-faction ability, so again, Skyports, Covens, etc. A player has to have an accurate representation in color scheme on the tabletop. So again, for an example, you want to run Beric Ziflin in a tournament, your army would be required by the tournament organization to be the colors in the book. Why is that a good or a bad idea? And we're going to start with Amanda.
So we see FAQ and meta changes pretty constantly. So you're going to paint your army one thing, and then the next FAQ is going to come out, and you're going to say, well, I don't really want to run that Skyport anymore because either the wording for the ability got changed, and so now you don't think it's as good, or different units are got a little bit of a boost and you want to play with them. So are you honestly going to go ahead and repaint your entire army? And then, so, I mean, one of the things against that is that obviously people might be assuming that you're running one thing, not reading your list that you provided them, and set up, deploy differently, play differently. So that was those would be my reasons why it is a bad idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Gotta clarify. Sean?
Sorry.
So, I think it's a bad idea to have rules based around color schemes. I think kind of stifles player creativity. For me, I don't consider myself super competitive, but I am definitely stubborn to the point where I will pick a scheme that I like and use its rules, whether they're good or bad. For example, in my 40k army, Ultramarines, a lot of people are going to sigh, but I love everything about them. I love blue and gold, and I mean, it helps that they're the poster boys, and I think they have one of, if not the best chapter tactics. But I digress. I will always...
We're a Sigmar show. This is a Sigmar shirt. We're not talking about 40k.
So I digress. I would paint my army whatever rules I wanted them to have, and then good or bad, continue using them. But I think it is a negative if people are really enforcing the color schemes representing the army that you want to play, or the abilities that you want to use, especially now that a lot of the new abilities really influence the way the armies play.
Yeah.
Sure. And Kevin?
I'm with Sean again. It is a bad idea to limit players to a color scheme if they want the abilities in a tournament setting. Even though I support that at first glance, yes, I want it to look like what it's doing. In Sean's case, the Ultramarines, I want them to look like it. But again, putting a cap on creativity and letting your imagination flow with whatever you want to paint your army is a little bit more important than painting them a specific color just to get traits.
Yeah. I also agree it's probably a bad idea for tournaments to restrict that. I personally agree with Sean that if I see a color or a faction ability that I think is really good, I'm going to paint the army in that specific color scheme. My overlords are the prime example of that. But there is a downside to that. If eventually Wanderers comes out with their own battletome and they get sub-abilities, I made a custom color scheme because they didn't have one yet. So I wouldn't be able to use any of them. So yeah, I definitely think that it's just putting an extra barrier on the barrier to entry for players that is unnecessary for tournaments. We want to see more people coming out for tournaments, not less. So, All right, and then as with every show, the outlandish prediction at the very end, which nobody on the panel has seen. Hopefully nobody read my notes before the show started. And it doesn't have anything to do with our paint topics because something huge happened this week, and that is the General's Handbook 2018 as well as Age of Sigmar 2 are coming out in 3 weeks. So the outlandish prediction for today is with the General's Handbook and Age of Sigmar 2 coming out next month. Give us one outlandish prediction that you have about something that will be changed, updated, or released on or in the same month as these two books, and we're going to start with Sean.
Ooh, okay. I don't know if I want to call it outlandish, but so far we've been 2 for 2 in terms of the heralds that came out for the Line Importance. So I am really hoping that my 300 Moonclan Grots can be used again with the new battletome that will hopefully have rules for them. With the fact that one of the 4 heralds was the shaman.
All right, make it more outlandish. What models are coming out with?
Ooh, there were rumors in the Overlord's book that there were goblins with also flying ships or contraptions, so a model based off of that would be cool.
That would be great. If there was like
Yeah.
World of Warcraft goblin skyboats, I'd be so on board for that. All right, Kevin, what's your outlandish prediction?
Skip to Amanda. I have no idea yet.
Okay, Amanda, what's your outlandish prediction?
I'd like to see more battalions that incorporate two armies together. It's not very outlandish. I need time to prepare and think.
It's a rapid fire question. You don't get one. Nobody on the panel does.
I know, but I'm just saying. I don't know. I hope we get a really new, awesome faction that, I don't know. Destruction needs love. A really cool destruction army.
So goblins.
Yeah, but cool goblins, not
So
night
sky
elf
goblins.
That's sad.
goblins. I don't know. Sorry, I feel like I'm
Sounds like
disappointing
someone's,
with my list.
You
Well,
may.
yeah.
Okay.
If you guys don't know, I've got another one.
So,
okay.
I would like to see the end of Grand Alliances. I want to see infighting between everybody. I want to see infighting between Sigmar. I want to see infighting between Lizardmen and Skaven and Ironjaws. And I want to see just total chaos. Everybody turns against each other. Everybody tries to betray each other.
Yeah, that is one thing that I think we talked about was no more soup, no more grand alliances. Just be done with them.
Okay.
So.
And Sean, what? Because those were so sad. what's
Number
your-
2, I am fairly certain that one of the books that came out was about God Beasts. I think it would be awesome if GW released like a model that was like $180 and was kind of like anyone can take it, and it's like a huge model. I'm talking like a footprint that's like 12
Bigger than a
inches by
dread
like
sword.
18 inches. Yeah,
Mhm.
like a big, huge, mystical, mythic beast.
Didn't they have a like chaos dragon last
Yeah,
year that got
It's
shown?
massive. It was out at Warhammer Fest.
Yeah,
It's
so
huge. It's
something
like-
like that would be really
It's
cool.
like 2 Dread Sarns big. So I don't think we'll ever see that played because there's no way you're going to fit that in an army, points wise. But it looks awesome. My outlandish prediction for Age of Sigmar 2 is we're going to see. I should have been thinking while you guys were talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
And you
really
had
just-
time
it's really,
to prepare.
It's really just not even that outlandish, but I'm going to say that we're going to go to 6 turns instead of 5 in General's Handbook.
And do you think that the around 2-hour time limit at tournaments is going to stick then with
God,
6 turns?
That could be an entire other show. If you can't get 6 turns done in 2.5 hours, you're playing the game wrong. Straight up. There is something wrong with you.
Or you have 300 Moon Clan goblins and no movement trace.
I
That's
suppose, but that's a conscious decision to bring that to a
It
tournament.
is.
Yeah, because you should be able. Well,
Rule
if you're
of
playing
cool.
against 300 night goblins, you should be done before turn 5 anyway, because you should table them. But there's only one unit that can get inspiring presence. And
There is.
yeah, and before the Warhammer Fest, I would have said that they would have changed command abilities to be able to have everybody use them, because we saw it in Nurgle, whatever they're called.
The wording.
The wording for that.
Mhm.
If this is your general, you can use it, which is a prelude to why could he not use this if he wasn't your general? And so I would have said that, but that's actually what's happening. Oh,
Yep.
I know. I'll talk about command dice. Command dice are what's going to be used to influence who can use their command abilities. It makes a lot of sense. They both have the same word in it. You're going to be using command dice to have your heroes activate their command abilities. So it's not just a free, everybody can start yelling at each other, because that I think would be really overpowered. And since they're not changing Archaon as of today's or Wednesday's top faction focus, they're not changing Archaon's command ability. I'm going to say that it's going to be, there is a restriction or a cost to using a command ability on a hero.
What is his command ability?
Archaon's command ability is that all of your heroes can use their command abilities.
Oh, okay.
So, and he got a points reduction, so who knows?
He
You
did.
might actually see the table soon. All right, so unless anybody has anything to add about any of the things we talked about, any more outlandish predictions, now that we've had a chance to think about it,
Nope.
going,
Good.
Nope.
gone. All right, so then thanks for tuning in. This is episode 3 of our roundtable discussion. Next Saturday, we've got another show planned already. We're going to be talking about battalions. I don't know if they're going to stay the same,
We'll see.
but we already have a pre-planned show, because we're going to just keep talking about Sigmar as it is until the inevitable release. And as always, this month we're doing a giveaway. We've got the Idoneth Deepkin battletome up for grabs. All you have to do is leave a comment on any of our videos, battle reports, unboxing, painting tutorials, or leave a comment on the RTDs. You can even answer some of the questions that we asked. It would be great to hear from the community.
Yeah.
You leave a comment, you're entered for a chance to win the battletome. We're going to ship it anywhere in the world. The drawing for that is the first Saturday in June on the RTD. So if you leave a comment, be sure to tune into that video and see if you win.
You can hit up our Twitter too at the 10th Realm.
Or Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't use Twitter, so it's good to.
It's all right.
Instagram.
I got it covered.
Yep.
And yeah, we got Instagram accounts. We've got Kevin's on Instagram. Amanda and I are both on Instagram. Sean's not cool enough for Instagram.
No.
He tried to make an account and they said, "Sorry, you're not cool enough." So
Yeah.
it's a tragedy.
Millennials.
Yeah. All right, but anyway, thanks for stopping in. And Kevin, you want to sign us off?
Thank you guys for joining us in the 10th Realm. We'll see you next time.